The Odyssey, humanity's grandest vessel of interdimensional exploration, was not designed for this. Her sleek, crystalline hull, meant to shimmer through the ordered geometries of known spacetime, now groaned under the impossible pressures of the Aethel-Void. One moment they were charting the serene, crystalline plains of Dimension 7G Beta. The next, a catastrophic energy surge, a ripple in the fabric of reality itself, had torn them adrift. The Odyssey didn't just enter the Aethel-Void. She was ingested. Initial reports were a cacophony of terror. Gravity fluctuations. No, reality fluctuations, screamed a frantic voice over the comms. Sensors are melting. They're showing impossible colors, non-Euclidean geometries. Then the screams began. Not just the screams of the dying as bulkheads buckled and life support failed, but the deeper, more insidious screams of minds unraveling. Commander Elias Thorne, the Odyssey's lead xenolinguist and accidental captain, after the bridge was vaporized, clung to a stanchion, his knuckles white. Around him, the ship's interior pulsed with sickly, phosphorescent light that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. Walls rippled like water, then solidified into something resembling calcified bone, only to dissolve into swirling nebulae of pure thought. The air itself tasted of ozone and despair. "Report," Thorne bellowed, his voice raw. He forced his eyes to focus, to ignore the peripheral distortions, the crewmate whose face momentarily inverted, the corridor that stretched into infinity before snapping back into a cramped passage. Life support failing on decks Gamma through Epsilon. Lieutenant Anya Sharma's voice crackled, remarkably steady despite the chaos. Containment breaches across all research labs. The entities are manifesting. The entities. That was the polite term. They were the reason the Aethel-Void was classified as a nightmare-class exclusion zone by the few civilizations that had ever glimpsed its fringes. Unspeakable, formless things that existed outside conventional physics, preying on sanity itself. They were the whispers in the dark, the shadows that moved when you weren't looking, the sudden, overwhelming certainty that your own hands were not your own. The Odyssey had been a beacon of scientific ambition, carrying 50,000 souls, scientists, engineers, artists, families, on a generational voyage of discovery. Now it was a tomb ship, slowly being digested by a dimension that defied all logic. Days bled into weeks. The initial panic gave way to a grim, desperate struggle for survival. The ship, or what remained of it, had settled into a relatively stable pocket of the Aethel-Void, a vast, pulsating cavern of impossible scale. The air was breathable, albeit thick with an alien scent of decay and something akin to burning ozone. Strange, bioluminescent flora pulsed on the cavern walls, casting shifting, hallucinatory patterns. Elias Thorne, now the de facto leader of the surviving 12,000, established the sanctuary, a fortified section of the Odyssey's core, powered by scavenged reactors and shielded by hastily erected psionic dampeners, crude devices designed to filter out the most aggressive mental assaults of the Veil. "We are not just fighting for survival," Thorne announced during one of the grim, daily assemblies in the makeshift mess hall. His face was gaunt, his eyes haunted, but his voice held a steel that resonated with the desperate hope of his people. "We are fighting for our minds, for our very definition of what it means to be human." The psychological toll was immense. Many succumbed to the whispers, descending into catatonia or violent madness. Others simply vanished, absorbed by the dimension, leaving only a lingering sense of absence. But for every one who broke, another found a new, terrifying resilience. They learned to filter, to compartmentalize, to build mental fortresses against the onslaught. They learned to see the beauty in the grotesque, the patterns in the chaos. Among them was Dr. Eris Thorne, Elias's son, a brilliant but eccentric xenophysicist who had been confined to the Odyssey's brig for unauthorized experiments with exotic matter just before the breach. Now his peculiar insights, once dismissed as dangerous, became invaluable. "Commander," Eris said one cycle, his eyes gleaming with a manic intensity that Elias found both terrifying and inspiring. "The Aethel-Void isn't just chaos. It's structured chaos, like a storm, but a storm of pure information. And energy. Elias stared at his son, who had spent the last few weeks in a lab cobbled together from salvaged equipment, surrounded by flickering screens displaying equations that made no sense. Energy, Eris? All I see is entropy. No, Commander. Look at the distortions. The reality shifts. They're not random. They follow patterns like waves. And waves carry energy. Immense energy. Enough to power us, to sustain us, perhaps even to change us. Eris gestured wildly at a glowing, pulsating crystal he had somehow coaxed into existence from the cavern wall. It hummed with an unnatural vibrancy, its light twisting the shadows around it into fleeting, impossible shapes. This, Commander, is Aethel energy, and it's everywhere. The first glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness of the Aethel void had appeared. It was a terrifying, sanity-bending hope, born from the very fabric of their nightmare. Eris Thorne's discovery of Aethel energy was not a eureka moment, but a slow, agonizing descent into the very heart of the Aethel void's madness, followed by a terrifying, triumphant ascent. He had spent weeks in the makeshift lab, his mind a battleground against the constant psychic assault. He ate little, slept less. His only companions the flickering readouts and the increasingly complex, self-generating equations that danced across his screens. His initial hypothesis was simple if insane. If the Aethel void was a dimension of pure, unbridled information and reality-bending energy, then perhaps that energy could be tapped, not resisted, not shielded against, but embraced and channeled. He theorized that the very act of a stable consciousness trying to comprehend the impossible geometries and shifting realities created a localized stress, a kind of friction that could be harvested. His first successful prototype was a crude sanity siphon. It looked like a tangled mess of salvaged wiring, a repurposed power conduit, and a cluster of the strange, pulsating crystals he'd found embedded in the cavern walls. When activated, it emitted a low, guttural hum that seemed to vibrate directly in the user's teeth, and a faint, sickly green aura. It works by creating a localized cognitive dissonance field, Eris explained to a skeptical Elias, who watched from a safe distance. The field amplifies the reality distortions within its radius, forcing the veil to expend energy to maintain its chaotic state. We then capture that expended energy. The demonstration was unsettling. Eris placed a small, withered plant, one of the few Earth-native specimens that had survived, near the siphon. As he activated it, the plant began to twitch. Its leaves elongated, twisted into impossible knots, then dissolved into a cloud of iridescent dust. The dust reformed into a miniature, multi-limbed creature that scuttled across the table before winking out of existence. Simultaneously, the siphon's energy readout spiked. "It's consuming reality?" Elias asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "No, Commander. It's processing it. The veil is trying to assert its influence, to break down the stable reality of the plant. The siphon forces it to do so at an accelerated rate, and in doing so, it releases a burst of Aethel energy. It's like a pressure valve, but one we can control." Eris looked almost giddy. The more chaotic the surrounding reality, the more potent the energy yield. The implications were staggering. It meant that the very horror of their environment, the constant assault on their senses and sanity, could be their salvation. The more the veil tried to break them, the more power they could generate. It was a terrifying, symbiotic relationship. The first Aethel generators were massive, unwieldy constructs, requiring a dedicated team of engineers and a constant supply of the pulsating crystals. They were placed in the most unstable pockets of the sanctuary, where the veil's influence was strongest. The engineers who operated them had to undergo rigorous psychological conditioning, learning to compartmentalize their minds, to build mental walls against the whispers and the fleeting, impossible visions. They were the first Veil engineers, a new class of specialists. With Aethel energy, the sanctuary began to stabilize. The flickering lights became constant. The scavenged life support systems hummed with renewed vigor. They could power more sophisticated psionic dampeners, creating localized sanity shields that pushed back the veil's influence, creating pockets of stable, Earth-like reality within the Odyssey's ruins. These shields were not perfect. Distortion still occurred, but they were manageable, less aggressive. The next breakthrough came with material science. The veil was not just energy. It was also matter, albeit matter that defied conventional atomic structure. The bioluminescent flora, the calcified bone-like structures that formed and dissolved, the strange, crystalline formations, all were manifestations of the veil's unique properties. Dr. Lena Petrova, a material scientist, began studying these alien substances. She discovered that by exposing them to carefully calibrated Ethel energy fields, they could be coaxed into forming stable, incredibly resilient structures. The result was void weave, a material that was both flexible and incredibly strong, capable of shrugging off impacts that would shatter steel. It also had a peculiar property. It seemed to subtly absorb and dissipate the veil's psychic energies, making it an ideal building material for extensions of the sanctuary. "It's like it's alive," Petrova murmured, holding a shimmering sample of void weave. "It resonates with the veil, but it doesn't succumb. It adapts." This adaptability became the new mantra. Humanity was no longer fighting the veil. They were learning from it. They were becoming a part of it, yet retaining their core identity. The desperate survivors of the Odyssey were slowly, terrifyingly, transforming into something new, the Aethel-Born. With stable power and resilient materials, the human survivors began to look beyond the immediate confines of the sanctuary. The Aethel Void was a prison, but it was also a vast, unexplored frontier. Resources were finite within the Odyssey's wreckage. If they were to truly thrive, they needed to venture out. This need gave birth to the Veil Walkers. Commander Kalen Vance, a former deep space reconnaissance specialist with a reputation for unflappable calm in the face of the impossible, volunteered to lead the first expedition. He was a man of quiet strength, his eyes holding the weariness of countless battles, but also an unyielding resolve. "We need volunteers," Vance announced to the assembled survivors. "This will be the most dangerous mission any human has ever undertaken. You will face things that will try to break your mind, your body, your very soul. But if we succeed, we secure our future." The response was surprising. Desperation had forged a new kind of courage. Engineers, former security personnel, even a few artists and philosophers, stepped forward. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense, but individuals who had found a grim determination to survive, to adapt. The training was brutal. Veil Walkers underwent intensive psychological conditioning, designed by Dr. Eris Thorne himself, to build mental barriers against the Veil's psychic assault. They learned to identify and ignore the subtle distortions, the phantom limbs, the whispers that promised madness or oblivion. They were taught to focus on their mission, to anchor themselves to a shared, stable reality. Their equipment was a testament to human ingenuity. Voidweave suits, reinforced with Ethel energy dampeners, offer protection against both physical and psychic attacks. Their tools were Ethel-powered, capable of cutting through the Veil's strange matter and analyzing its properties. Each Veil Walker carried a personal sanity beacon, a small device that projected a localized reality field, providing a brief respite from the distortions when needed. The first expedition consisted of 5 Veil Walkers, led by Vance. Their mission: to scout a 10-kilometer radius around the sanctuary, identify potential resource nodes, and map the most stable pathways. "Remember your training," Eris Thorne told them as they prepared to depart. "The Veil preys on fear and uncertainty. Embrace the impossible. See it, acknowledge it, and then dismiss it. You are the anchors of reality." As the airlock hissed open, revealing the pulsating, alien landscape of the Ethel Void, even Vance felt a tremor of apprehension. The cavern stretched into an infinite, shifting expanse, illuminated by the sickly glow of the bioluminescent flora and the distant, swirling nebulae of pure thought. Impossible structures loomed in the distance, resembling colossal, petrified organs or vast, skeletal cathedrals. Their first steps were tentative. The ground beneath their void-weave boots felt spongy, then solid, then momentarily dissolved into a vortex of colors before reforming. The air hummed with a low, guttural thrum that seemed to bypass their ears and vibrate directly in their bones. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the cavern wall. It was amorphous, shifting, a collection of eyes and mouths that formed and dissolved in a sickening ballet. It moved with unnatural speed, its form stretching and contracting, its whispers a chorus of forgotten fears and impossible truths. Standard protocols. Vance barked, his voice steady despite the surge of primal terror. Sanity beacons on. Form defensive perimeter. The Veil Walkers activated their beacons. A shimmering, blue aura enveloped them, pushing back the immediate psychic assault. The creature hesitated, its form flickering, as if confused by the localized stability. One of the Veil Walkers, a former geologist named Anya, raised her Aethel-powered scanner. It's a Class 3 psionic predator commander. Highly aggressive, but sensitive to concentrated reality fields. Vance nodded. Engage with non-lethal deterrence. We don't know its true nature or if it's part of a larger ecosystem. They deployed sonic emitters, devices that generated focused bursts of Aethel energy, disrupting the creature's amorphous form. The predator shrieked, a sound that tore at their minds, but its form began to dissipate. It retreated into the shadows, leaving behind a lingering scent of ozone and something akin to burnt sugar. The expedition continued. They encountered more entities, shimmering, crystalline beings that moved with impossible grace, leaving trails of pure light. Colossal, multi-limbed horrors that seemed to be part of the cavern itself, and the omnipresent, insidious whispers that tried to burrow into their minds. But the Veil Walkers persevered. They learned to navigate the shifting terrain, to anticipate the reality distortions, to read the subtle signs of an approaching entity. They discovered vast deposits of the pulsating crystals, rich veins of void-weave material, and even strange, liquid pools that seemed to contain concentrated Aethel energy. After 3 grueling cycles, they returned to the sanctuary, exhausted but triumphant. They had lost one member to a sudden, catastrophic reality collapse, but the data they brought back was invaluable. They had mapped a network of stable pathways, identified critical resource zones, and, most importantly, proven that humanity could not only survive in the Aethel Void, but could actively explore and exploit it. The Veil Walkers became the new heroes, their stories of courage and resilience inspiring the entire population. They were the pioneers of a new frontier, pushing back the boundaries of the nightmare, one terrifying step at a time. Generations passed. The initial survivors of the Odyssey became the revered ancestors, their stories woven into the very fabric of the new human civilization within the Aethel Void. Their descendants, the Aethel-born, were different. They were not just adapted to the nightmare dimension. They were, in a profound and unsettling way of it. The subtle mutations Dr. Eris Thorne had theorized began to manifest. The Aethel-born possessed heightened sensory perception, capable of discerning patterns in the Veil's chaos that would drive a baseline human to madness. Their eyes, often with irises that shimmered with impossible colors, could perceive the faint energetic signatures of the Veil's entities, even when they were otherwise invisible. Their hearing was attuned to the underlying hum of the dimension, allowing them to anticipate reality shifts before they occurred. Most remarkably, their minds developed an innate resilience to the Veil's psychic assault. The whispers were still there, but for the Aethel-born, they were no longer a source of terror, but a constant, low-level hum, like background noise. Some even claimed to discern meaning in the whispers, to hear fragmented truths or echoes of distant realities. Alara's soul was one such Aethel-born, born into the 3rd generation after the breach. From a young age, she exhibited abilities that surpassed even the most resilient Veil Walkers. Her mind was not just resistant to the whispers, it seemed to resonate with them. She could hear the Veil with startling clarity, not as a cacophony of madness, but as a complex symphony of energies and intentions. Her parents, both Veil engineers, had initially been terrified by her unique sensitivity. They feared she would be the first to truly succumb, to be absorbed entirely by the dimension. But Alara proved them wrong. She learned to filter the noise, to focus on specific frequencies, to even, on rare occasions, send out a faint, mental echo into the veil. She became known as Alara Whisper, or simply the Whisperer. Eris Thorn, now an ancient, revered figure, a living legend whose mind was a labyrinth of ethel-physics and philosophical madness, took a special interest in Alara. He saw in her the culmination of his life's work, the ultimate adaptation. "You are a bridge child," Eris rasped, his voice thin but his eyes sharp with an almost predatory intelligence. He was confined to a life support chair, his body ravaged by decades of exposure to raw ethel energy, but his mind remained a formidable force. "You can speak to the veil, and it, in turn, speaks to you. What does it say?" Alara, then a young woman of 20, sat patiently beside him. Her eyes, a swirling vortex of violet and gold, seemed to gaze into distances beyond the sanctuary walls. "It speaks of patterns, Elder Eris, of currents and tides. It is not chaos, not truly. It is a vast, living consciousness, but one so alien, so immense, that its thoughts are our nightmares." She described how she could sense the flows of ethel energy, how she could predict where a reality shift would occur, or where a dormant entity might awaken. She could even, with intense concentration, subtly nudge the veil's localized manifestations, making a shimmering wall solidify for a moment, or a whispering shadow retreat. Her abilities revolutionized veil walking. Instead of blindly navigating the dimension, Alara could guide expeditions, leading them through the most stable pathways, or, conversely, into areas rich with ethel energy, knowing precisely when and where to expect a surge of distortion. She became an invaluable asset, a living map and compass for a world that defied cartography. The culture of the Ethel-born had also evolved. Art was no longer about replicating earthly beauty, but about capturing the impossible geometries and shifting colors of the veil. Sculptors created dynamic, kinetic pieces that pulsed with ethel energy, their forms constantly changing. Musicians composed symphonies that incorporated the veil's low thrum, creating melodies that were both haunting and strangely beautiful. Philosophers debated the nature of reality, the meaning of consciousness in a dimension where both were fluid. The sanctuary, once a desperate stronghold, had expanded into a sprawling city of void-weave structures, powered by immense ethel generators. Its domes shimmered with sanity shields, creating stable, breathable environments where children played and life flourished. Beyond the domes, the Veil Walkers continued their explorations, establishing smaller, temporary outposts, pushing the boundaries of human habitation. Yet, a new threat began to emerge. The Veil was not static. The entities, once seemingly random manifestations, began to coalesce, to exhibit a disturbing degree of coordination. The whispers, which Alara had learned to interpret, grew more insistent, more focused. They spoke of a convergence, a gathering of the Veil's disparate consciousnesses into a single, overwhelming force. "It's waking up," Alara told Commander Kalen Vance, now the grizzled, wise leader of the Veil Walkers, his face etched with the lines of 1,000 impossible journeys. "The Veil is not just a dimension, it's an entity, and it's becoming aware of us. It's trying to absorb us." The Whispers had a new, terrifying message: join us. Become one. Dissolve into the infinite. Humanity had adapted, thrived, and even found beauty in the nightmare. But the nightmare itself was now fighting back, with a consciousness and purpose that chilled them to the bone. The true test of the Ethel-born was about to begin. The warnings from Alara Whisper grew more urgent. The Veil was indeed coalescing. The localized manifestations of entities, once sporadic and seemingly random, now moved with a terrifying synchronicity. The whispers, once a chaotic murmur, began to form a coherent, albeit alien, chorus, pressing against the sanity shields of the Aethel-Forge, the new, grand name for their sprawling city. "It's like a tide," Alara explained to the Elder Council, her voice strained. "A mental tide. It's pushing against our reality, trying to erode our stability. I can feel the individual consciousnesses of the entities merging, forming a single, vast intelligence. It wants integration." The Elder Council, composed of the wisest and most resilient Ethel-born, listened grimly. They had overseen generations of adaptation, transforming a refugee camp into a thriving civilization. But this was different. This was the Veil itself, awakening to their presence, perceiving them as an anomaly, a foreign body to be assimilated. Commander Kalen Vance, his eyes sharp and alert despite his advanced age, proposed a radical defense. We cannot fight a dimension, but we can fight a consciousness. If the Veil is coalescing, then it has a focal point, a nexus. We need to find it and sever its connection to the collective. Dr. Eris Thorne, his mind still a beacon of ingenuity, despite his fading body, offered a terrifying solution. If the Veil is a consciousness, then it operates on Ethel energy. If we can overload its primary nexus with a concentrated burst of our Ethel energy, we might disrupt its cohesion. It would be like a psychic defibrillator. The plan was audacious, suicidal even. It required a direct assault into the most unstable, most concentrated region of the Veil, the very heart of the burgeoning consciousness. It would be a journey through pure, unadulterated madness. We will need a strike team, Vance declared. The most skilled Veil walkers, equipped with the most powerful Ethel energy projectors we can build. Alara stepped forward. I must go. I am the only one who can navigate the currents of the Veil, who can pinpoint the nexus. Vance hesitated. Alara was too valuable, too unique. But he knew she was right. Her connection to the Veil was their only hope. Very well, Whisper. You will lead the way, but you will be protected. The strike team was assembled. Vance, Alara, and 10 of the most seasoned Veil walkers, each a master of mental fortitude and adaptive combat. Their Ethel energy projectors, modified from Eris Thorne's original siphons, were now capable of unleashing devastating bursts of raw, reality-warping energy. Their journey into the heart of the convergence was a descent into a living nightmare. The sanity shields of their void-weave transport flickered and strained under the immense psychic pressure. The landscape outside was a maelstrom of impossible colors and shifting forms. Mountains of flesh pulsed with unseen organs. Rivers of pure light flowed uphill, and the sky was a kaleidoscope of screaming faces. The whispers were deafening now, a chorus of alien voices trying to pry open their minds, to flood them with cosmic dread. Even the seasoned Veil walkers struggled, their faces contorted in silent battles against the mental assault. Alara, however, seemed to thrive in the chaos. Her eyes glowed, and a faint, violet aura pulsed around her. She was not just resisting the whispers. She was dancing with them, interpreting their currents, guiding the transport through the most treacherous psychic eddies. Left. Hard left, she commanded, her voice cutting through the mental noise. There's a localized reality collapse forming ahead. It's a trap. Vance, trusting her implicitly, veered the transport. A moment later, the space they would have occupied folded in on itself, collapsing into a singularity of pure nothingness before snapping back into a distorted, shimmering landscape. They encountered the Veil's coalesced entities, not the amorphous shadows of their early days, but colossal, semi-formed beings of pure thought and distorted matter. They were like titans of nightmare, their forms constantly shifting, their attacks manifesting as waves of psychic agony or localized reality warps that threatened to tear the transport apart. The Veil walkers fought back with their Ethel energy projectors. Blasts of concentrated reality-stabilizing energy tore through the entities, momentarily disrupting their forms, forcing them to retreat or dissolve. It was a brutal, desperate battle, but humanity, forged in this crucible, refused to yield. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Alara pointed. There, the Nexus. It's a focal point of pure thought. It's trying to absorb everything. Before them, suspended in a void of swirling, impossible colors, was a colossal, pulsating sphere of pure, condensed Ethel energy. It hummed with an immense power, drawing in the surrounding reality, absorbing the very essence of the Veil. It was the heart of the awakened consciousness. Target locked, Vance said, his voice grim. All projectors, full power. Aim for the core. The Veil walkers unleashed a torrent of Ethel energy. The sphere pulsed, its colors intensifying, as if in agony. The whispers around them rose to a crescendo of shrieks and howls as the Veil's consciousness reacted to the assault. The very fabric of the dimension seemed to convulse, but the Aethel-Born held firm. Their resolve, their collective will, was a force as potent as any Aethel energy blast. They poured everything they had into the attack, their minds screaming in unison, "We will not be absorbed. We will not yield." The sphere began to crack. Fissures of pure light erupted across its surface, followed by a deafening, reality-shattering roar that echoed through the entire dimension. The sphere exploded, not with a physical detonation, but with a psychic implosion, a sudden, violent dispersion of consciousness. The whispers ceased. The impossible landscape around them shimmered, then began to settle. The colossal entities dissolved into harmless, shimmering motes of light. The Aethel void still pulsed with its alien energies, but the overwhelming, cohesive presence was gone. Silence, a profound, unsettling silence, broken only by the ragged breaths of the Veil Walkers. They had done it. They had defeated a dimension, or at least they had severed its nascent consciousness, forcing it back into a state of fragmented, manageable chaos. The aftermath of the convergence was not a return to normalcy, but a new beginning. The Aethel void, though still a dimension of impossible horrors, was no longer actively trying to assimilate them. The psychic pressure had receded. The reality distortions became less aggressive, and the entities, while still present, reverted to their more fragmented, less coordinated states. Humanity had faced the ultimate nightmare and emerged victorious. They had not merely survived. They had actively reshaped their environment, asserting their will over a dimension that had sought to consume them. The Aethel-Forge, their city, now truly lived up to its name. It was a crucible where human ingenuity and the alien energies of the Veil were forged into something new and powerful. The city expanded rapidly, its void-weaved domes shimmering with a confident, almost defiant glow. New Aethel generators, more efficient and powerful than ever, hummed at its core, drawing energy from the now dispersed patterns of the Veil. Dr. Eris Thorne, weakened but triumphant, oversaw the construction of the Nexus Spire, a colossal tower of void-weave and pulsating Aethel crystals at the very center of the Aethel-Forge. It was designed not just to generate power, but to act as a massive, localized reality anchor, subtly influencing the surrounding Veil, creating a vast, stable zone around the city. "We are not just surviving here," Eris declared during the Spire's activation ceremony, his voice amplified by the city's comms. "We are terraforming it, not with conventional means, but with our minds, our will, our very presence. We are making the impossible possible." Lara Whisper, now a revered figure, almost mythical in her abilities, became the chief architect of the Aethel-Forge's expansion. Her unique connection to the Veil allowed her to sense the most stable pathways for new settlements, the richest veins of resources, and the subtle energetic currents that could be harnessed for new technologies. She guided the Veil Walkers, not just physically, but psychically, her mind a beacon in the shifting darkness. New technologies flourished. Reality printers emerged, devices that could, with enough Aethel energy and precise mental focus, manifest objects from pure thought, drawing on the Veil's fluid nature. They could create tools, components, even food, though the process was complex and energy-intensive. The Aethel-Born continued to evolve. Their physical adaptations became more pronounced. Many developed a faint, bioluminescent glow on their skin, a harmless side effect of constant Aethel energy exposure. Their senses sharpened further, allowing them to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, to hear the subtle vibrations of matter at a molecular level. Their minds, having been tempered by the Veil, were now incredibly resilient, capable of processing vast amounts of complex, nonlinear information without succumbing to overload. The culture of the Aethel-Born deepened its embrace of the alien. Their art became even more abstract, their music more dissonant yet harmonious, reflecting the complex beauty they found in the Veil. Their philosophy revolved around the concept of adaptive existence, the idea that true strength lay not in rigid adherence to old forms, but in the ability to constantly evolve and integrate new realities. Life in the Aethel-Forge was vibrant, Children, born and raised entirely within the Veil, knew no other home. They played games that involved subtly shifting their toys' forms or creating temporary, localized reality bubbles. They learned to interpret the Veil's whispers as bedtime stories, finding comfort in the strange, alien hum of their world. But humanity's ambition did not end with mastering their immediate environment. The Odyssey had been a vessel of interdimensional exploration, and though it was now a ruin, its purpose lived on in the hearts of the Aethel-Born. "We have tamed this nightmare," Commander Vance, now the Elder Commander, his voice raspy with age but his eyes still burning with the fire of exploration, addressed a new generation of Veil Walkers. "But the universe is vast. There are other dimensions, other realities, and we, the Aethel-Born, are uniquely equipped to explore them." The goal was no longer escape, but controlled, deliberate expansion. They envisioned Veil gates, stable portals powered by immense Aethel energy, capable of punching through the dimensional fabric into other realities. They would not be refugees seeking sanctuary. They would be explorers, ambassadors of a new kind of humanity, forged in the crucible of cosmic horror. The Aethel-Forge was not just a city. It was a launch pad, a testament to humanity's indomitable spirit, its boundless adaptability, and its terrifying capacity to find strength and beauty in the very heart of darkness. They had turned a nightmare into a home, and now they looked outwards, ready to bring their unique brand of resilience to the cosmos. Despite their mastery over the Aethel Void and the vibrant, unique culture that had blossomed within the Aethel-Forge, a subtle longing for their original home persisted, not a desire to return to Earth. That world, with its rigid physics and predictable realities, now seemed almost quaint, too small, but a yearning to understand what had become of it. The Odyssey had been lost for centuries by Earth time, perhaps millennia. What had happened to the civilization that had launched them? Elara Whisper, now known simply as the Oracle of the Veil, was at the forefront of this new endeavor. Her connection to the dimension had deepened to an almost incomprehensible degree. She could not only interpret the Veil's whispers, but, with immense concentration, could use the dimension's inherent fluidity to glimpse echoes of other realities, faint vibrations from distant dimensions. "I see pathways," she told the Elder Council, her eyes distant, swirling with the colors of the Veil. Faint ephemeral connections, like threads in a vast tapestry. Some lead to places of order, of stable reality. Others to places of even greater chaos. The Council, now led by Vance's successor, Commander Theron, a stern but visionary leader, understood the implications. If Elara could perceive these pathways, perhaps they could be stabilized, amplified, and eventually traversed. The project was codenamed Echoes. Its goal was to develop a dimensional resonator, a device that could use concentrated Aethel energy, guided by Elara's unique abilities, to open a stable, temporary portal to a specific, desired dimension. The challenge was immense. The Veil's inherent chaos made precise targeting almost impossible. A miscalculation could lead them into a dimension of pure energy, or worse, a reality where the laws of physics were even more inimical than their current home. Dr. Eris Thorne, now a spectral presence, his consciousness largely residing within a network of linked Aethel crystals that kept his mind active, provided the theoretical framework. The Veil is a universal solvent, in a sense. It can dissolve the barriers between realities, but it needs a precise frequency, a harmonic resonance, to open a stable conduit. Elara is our tuning fork. The construction of the dimensional resonator began within the Nexus Spire. It was a monumental undertaking, requiring vast amounts of Aethel energy and the most advanced void weave construction techniques. The core of the resonator was a colossal array of Aethel crystals, each pulsing with controlled energy, designed to resonate at the precise frequency Elara identified. After years of painstaking research and countless failed attempts, a breakthrough occurred. Elara, in a deep trance, her mind fully immersed in the Veil's currents, identified a stable, repeating harmonic that seemed to emanate from a dimension remarkably similar to their original home. "It's a blue-green world," she whispered, her voice ethereal, "with a single moon, and a great star-spanning civilization. But it's not our past. It's a parallel, a possibility. The Council decided to attempt a controlled, temporary opening. They would send a small, unmanned probe for the portal, equipped with sensors to gather data. This was not about invasion or colonization, but about understanding, about reconnecting with the broader tapestry of existence. The day of the first activation was tense. The entire Aethel-Forge held its breath. Ilara stood at the heart of the resonator, her hands outstretched, her mind a conduit between the veil and the machine. Commander Theron watched from the control room, his hand hovering over the activation sequence. "Initiating sequence," Theron announced. A low hum, unlike anything heard before, filled the Nexus spire. The Ethel crystals pulsed with blinding light, their energies coalescing into a shimmering vortex in the center of the resonator. The air crackled with raw power, and the very walls of the spire seemed to vibrate. The vortex expanded, swirling with colors that defied description, until it stabilized into a shimmering, oval portal. Through it, they could glimpse a distant, blue-green planet, wreathed in white clouds. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a stark contrast to the chaotic beauty of their home. Probe launched. Theron commanded. A small, void-weave drone, equipped with advanced sensors, shot through the portal. For a few precious minutes, data streamed back. Atmospheric composition, gravitational readings, even faint radio signals. The signals were complex, technological, indicating a highly advanced civilization. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the portal flickered and collapsed, the vortex dissolving back into shimmering light. The spire hummed down, and silence descended. The mission was a success. They had opened a stable portal, even if only for a brief time. They had confirmed the existence of other realities, other humanities. It was a profound moment, a validation of their centuries of struggle. "We are not alone," Ilara said, her voice filled with a quiet awe. "And we are no longer trapped. We are masters of the veil, and now we are ready to become masters of the pathways between worlds." The Aethel-born had not just survived a nightmare. They had transformed it into a gateway. Their future, once confined to a single, terrifying dimension, now stretched across the infinite possibilities of the multiverse. They were ready to explore, not as refugees, but as a new, formidable force in the cosmic tapestry. With the ability to glimpse and potentially access other dimensions, humanity's focus shifted slightly. While the Echoes project continued, aimed at refining stable portal technology, another, more profound transformation began within the Aethel-Forge itself, the creation of the Void Gardens. The Aethel-born had long since mastered the art of growing void flora, the strange, bioluminescent plants native to the Veil, which thrived on Ethel energy and provided a limited range of nutrients. But these were alien and often unsettling, their forms shifting, their colors pulsating with an unnatural vibrancy. The longing for something akin to earthly life, something that resonated with their ancestral memory, persisted. It was a young bioengineer named Lyra, a direct descendant of Dr. Lena Petrova, who proposed the seemingly impossible, to cultivate Earth-native flora within the Ethel Void. The Veil is a dimension of pure information and energy, Lyra argued before the Council. If we can stabilize localized reality fields, if we can provide the precise energetic frequencies, why can't we coax Earth plants to grow here? Not just survive, but thrive. Her theory was based on the understanding that the Veil's chaos was also its potential. If Ethel energy could be used to disrupt reality, it could also be used to construct it, to maintain a specific, stable set of physical laws within a contained environment. The first attempts were disastrous. Earth seeds, when exposed to the Veil's raw energies, either withered instantly or mutated into grotesque, non-viable forms. But Lyra persevered, working closely with Ilara Whisper, who could pinpoint the precise energetic harmonics needed to create a reality bubble perfectly attuned to Earth's botanical requirements. The breakthrough came with the development of chronostabilizers, small, Ethel-power devices that could slow down or accelerate localized time, allowing plants to grow at an accelerated rate within their reality bubbles or to be paused for observation. This allowed Lyra to rapidly iterate on her experiments. Finally, in a small, shielded chamber deep within the Aethel-Forge, the first Earth-native plant took root. It was a simple, hardy fern, its fronds a vibrant, reassuring green. It grew slowly at first, then with surprising vigor, its roots anchoring themselves in a specially prepared substrate of processed void materials. The sight of that fern brought tears to the eyes of the Elder Council. It was a tangible link to their past, a symbol of their enduring humanity. From that single fern, the void gardens blossomed. Massive domes of void weave, bathed in carefully calibrated Aethel energy, became havens of earthly life. Forests of towering trees, fields of swaying grasses, and vibrant flower beds bloomed under simulated sunlight, their colors a stark, beautiful contrast to the psychedelic hues of the veil outside. These gardens were not just for aesthetics. They became vital ecosystems, providing fresh air, clean water through advanced filtration systems, and a source of Earth-native food. The Aethel-born, who had adapted to a diet of processed void nutrients, rediscovered the simple joy of biting into a crisp apple or smelling the earthy scent of rain on soil. The void gardens also became centers of healing and contemplation. The constant, subtle psychic pressure of the veil, though manageable, was still a drain. Spending time in the stable, earth-like reality of the gardens provided a profound sense of peace and mental rejuvenation. They were places where the Aethel-born could reconnect with their ancestral heritage, where children could learn about the world their ancestors had left behind. But the gardens were not static recreations of Earth. They were infused with the subtle energies of the veil, leading to unique, beautiful adaptations. Flowers bloomed with petals that subtly shifted color in response to human emotion. Trees hummed with a faint, musical resonance. Fruits, while tasting familiar, often had an unexpected, ethereal aftertaste, a hint of the impossible. Lyra, now known as the Gardener of Worlds, continued to experiment, bringing in new species, crossbreeding them with resilient void flora to create hybrid plants that could thrive in less stable reality bubbles. She even began to cultivate sentient flora, plants that could subtly communicate through telepathic resonance, their consciousnesses a blend of earthly life and veil-infused energy. The void gardens were the ultimate expression of humanity's triumph. They had not just survived in a nightmare dimension. They had colonized it, not with brute force, but with ingenuity, adaptation, and an unyielding will to create beauty and life in the most inhospitable of environments. They had brought Earth to the Aethel void, and in doing so, had created something entirely new and extraordinary. The Aethel-Forge was now truly a home, a vibrant, living testament to the boundless spirit of humanity. As humanity expanded its reach within the Aethel void, establishing more void gardens and pushing the boundaries of the Nexus Spire's reality anchor, they encountered a new, more complex challenge: the sentient veil beasts. These were not the amorphous, instinct-driven entities they had initially encountered. These were creatures that had, like humanity, adapted to the veil, but in their own terrifying ways. They were intelligent, capable of complex thought, and possessed unique abilities derived from their deep connection to the dimension's fluid laws. The first encounter was with the Chronostalkers. They appeared as shimmering, multi-limbed predators, their forms subtly out of sync with normal time. They could appear and disappear in the blink of an eye, their movements blurring as they phased in and out of temporal reality. They hunted by manipulating localized time, trapping their prey in agonizingly slow moments or accelerating their demise. Commander Theron, now the Elder Commander, recognized the threat immediately. These are not mere beasts. They are hunters with a purpose. They perceive us as an intrusion, a disruption to their established order. Lara Whisper, the Oracle, confirmed his fears. They are the Veil's own adapted children, Commander. They see our stable realities, our void gardens, as wounds in the fabric of their world. They are trying to excise us. The Veil beasts were a formidable foe. Their intelligence meant they learned from their encounters, adapting their tactics. The Chronostalkers, for instance, quickly learned to bypass rudimentary sanity shields by phasing through them. Humanity's response was, as always, adaptation. The Veil Walkers, now a highly specialized force, developed new combat doctrines. They learned to predict the temporal shifts of the Chronostalkers, using Aethel energy pulses to disrupt their phasing abilities. They deployed temporal net devices, which created localized time distortions, trapping the Stalkers in a single moment, allowing the Veil Walkers to neutralize them. But the Chronostalkers were just the beginning. They soon encountered the Echo Weavers, colossal, spider-like beings that spun webs of pure, solidified thought. These webs could trap minds, drawing victims into hallucinatory realities, or slowly draining their consciousness. The Echo Weavers communicated through a complex telepathic language, their whispers insidious and manipulative. To counter the Echo Weavers, the Aethel-Born developed mind shields, advanced psionic dampeners that could actively scramble telepathic attacks. They also trained Dreamwalkers, individuals with a heightened mental resilience, who could enter the Echo Weavers' mental webs and disrupt them from within, rescuing trapped minds. Alara, naturally, was the most skilled Dreamwalker, capable of navigating the most complex mental mazes. The most terrifying of the new threats were the Reality Shapers. These were rare, almost mythical beings, capable of altering the very laws of physics within a localized area. They could turn solid ground into liquid, make gravity invert, or cause light to bend in impossible ways. Their presence was heralded by extreme, unpredictable distortions that even the Nexus Spire struggled to counteract. Fighting the Reality Shapers required a complete rethink of combat. Veil Walkers couldn't rely on stable ground or consistent physics. They had to become fluid themselves, adapting their movements and tactics on the fly. They developed adaptive suits, voidweave armor that could rapidly reconfigure its mass and density to compensate for gravity shifts, or generate localized force fields to deflect reality warps. The battles were brutal, costly, but humanity held its ground. They learned that the Veil Beasts, despite their terrifying power, were also products of their environment. They had weaknesses, patterns, and vulnerabilities that could be exploited. One pivotal encounter involved a Reality Shaper attempting to collapse an entire Void Garden. Commander Theron led the counterattack, while Alara, risking everything, entered a deep trance, extending her consciousness into the Veil to understand the Shaper's intentions. "It's not malicious, Commander," Alara whispered, her voice strained. "It's defending its territory. It perceives the garden as an invasive anomaly. It's trying to restore balance." This insight changed everything. Instead of simply fighting, humanity began to seek understanding. Eris Thorn, from his crystal-linked consciousness, proposed a radical idea: communication. If they are sentient, they can be reasoned with. Eris's voice resonated through the comms. "They are products of the Veil, just as we are now. Perhaps we can find a common ground, a way to coexist." It was a long, arduous process. Alara, acting as the primary conduit, spent cycles attempting to establish a dialogue with the Veil Beasts, particularly the Reality Shapers. It was a communication not of words, but of shared intent, of energetic resonance, of projecting stable concepts into their fluid minds. Slowly, painstakingly, a fragile understanding began to form. Humanity demonstrated that their presence, while altering the Veil, was not inherently destructive. They showed that the Void Gardens, while stable, could also be a source of new, complex patterns that enriched the Veil's own chaotic tapestry. They offered a symbiotic relationship, access to stable reality for the Veil Beasts in exchange for peace. The Reality Shapers, in their alien wisdom, eventually accepted. They did not become allies in the human sense, but they ceased their direct assaults. A tense, respectful coexistence emerged. The Veil Beasts continued to exist within their territories, and humanity within theirs, each acknowledging the other's right to exist within the vast, impossible expanse of the Aethel Void. Humanity had not just defeated the nightmare. They had learned to live with it, to understand its complex, alien inhabitants, and to forge a fragile, terrifying peace. It was a testament to their capacity for empathy, even in the face of the utterly alien. Chapter 10. The Multiversal Seed. Centuries had passed since the Odyssey breached into the Aethel Void. The Aethel-Born were no longer just survivors. They were a distinct species, a new branch of humanity, perfectly attuned to the fluid realities of their nightmare home. The Aethel-Forge was a sprawling, self-sufficient civilization, a beacon of stable reality in a dimension of chaos. The Void Gardens flourished, a testament to their ability to cultivate life in the impossible. And the Veil Beasts, once relentless foes, were now distant, respected neighbors. The Echoes Project, once a desperate hope, had matured into a sophisticated network of Veil Gates. These portals, powered by the immense Aethel energy generated by the Nexus Spire, could now be opened with remarkable precision, leading to a myriad of other dimensions. Ilara Whisper, now a being of almost pure Aethel energy, her physical form shimmering with iridescent light, was the undisputed master of the Veil Gates. She could sense the unique energetic signature of each dimension, guiding the massive portals to their precise targets. They had explored countless realities, dimensions of pure light, worlds made of living crystal, gas giants teeming with sentient energy beings, and even parallel Earths where humanity had taken wildly different evolutionary paths. They were not conquerors, but observers, traders of knowledge, sharing their unique understanding of adaptive existence and the harnessing of impossible energies. But the ultimate goal, the true culmination of their journey, was not just exploration. It was the Multiversal Seed Project. Dr. Eris Thorne, his consciousness now fully integrated into the Nexus Spire's central processing core, a living supercomputer of Aethel crystals and human thought, had conceived of it centuries ago. "We have mastered the Veil." His synthesized voice resonated through the council chambers. "We have transformed a nightmare into a cradle. Now we must spread that knowledge, that resilience, not to conquer, but to empower." The Multiversal Seed was a grand, terrifying ambition. It was a self-replicating, Aethel-powered construct, designed to be launched into a newly discovered, uninhabited nightmare dimension, a truly hostile, chaotic reality. Once there, it would begin a slow, painstaking process of terraforming, not by brute force, but by subtly influencing the dimension's inherent chaos, creating localized pockets of stability, nurturing nascent life forms, and eventually, if successful, laying the groundwork for a new, adapted civilization. It was an act of cosmic gardening, a way for humanity to give back to the multiverse, to demonstrate that even the most hostile realities could be transformed into something beautiful and habitable. The first target dimension was codenamed the Shifting Labyrinth. It was a reality of constant, violent topological changes, where space and time were meaningless, and entities of pure entropy roamed freely. It was a dimension that would have annihilated the Odyssey instantly. The launch of the first multiversal seed was a monumental event. The entire Aethel-Forge gathered, their faces uplifted towards the Nexus Spire, which pulsed with an unprecedented surge of Aethel energy. The Veil Gate, open to the Shifting Labyrinth, shimmered with a terrifying, chaotic beauty. Commander Theron, his voice filled with pride and a touch of awe, gave the command. "Launch the seed. Let humanity's resilience echo across the multiverse." The Multiversal Seed, colossal, void-weave construct bristling with Aethel engines and reality stabilizers, launched from the spire. It plunged into the shimmering chaos of the Veil Gate, disappearing into the unknown. For cycles, they monitored its progress through Ilara's connection to the Veil. It was a brutal struggle. The Shifting Labyrinth fought back, trying to tear the seed apart, to dissolve its stable reality. But the seed, imbued with the collective ingenuity and resilience of the Aethel-Born, held firm. Its Aethel engines roared, its reality stabilizers pushed back the chaos, and its automated systems began the slow, arduous process of establishing a foothold. Slowly, painstakingly, tiny, stable pocket of reality began to form within the Shifting Labyrinth. It was a microscopic island of order in an ocean of chaos, but it was there, and within it, the seed began to nurture the first, nascent forms of adapted life, drawing energy from the very entropy of the dimension. The Aethel-Born had come full circle. From desperate refugees trapped in a nightmare, they had become masters of their domain, and now they were the architects of new realities, seeding the multiverse with the indomitable spirit of humanity. They were not just survivors, they were creators, their very existence a testament to the fact that even in the darkest, most impossible corners of the cosmos, humanity would find a way, not just to live, but to thrive, to adapt, and to turn the nightmare into a forge for something truly extraordinary. The Odyssey had been lost, but humanity had found a new, unimaginable destiny. The success of the first multiversal seed in the shifting labyrinth marked a profound shift in the Aethel-Forge civilization. They were no longer merely exploring or surviving. They were actively engaging with the fundamental fabric of the multiverse, becoming architects of reality. The Aethel-Forge became the central hub of this grand endeavor, a nexus of interdimensional engineering and philosophical exploration. The seeds were not designed to replicate Earth, but to foster unique, adapted ecosystems within each nightmare dimension. Each seed, guided by Alara's unparalleled understanding of the Veil's subtle energies and Aethel-Forge's deep theoretical insights, was tailored to the specific chaotic properties of its target dimension. For a dimension of pure sound, the seed might foster life forms that communicated through complex sonic patterns and built structures from solidified vibrations. For a dimension of shifting light, it might cultivate beings that lived as pure photic energy. The Aethel-Forge themselves continued to evolve. Their bodies, already subtly bioluminescent, became more fluid, capable of minor, localized reality shifts. A veil walker might momentarily extend an arm to reach a distant object, or subtly alter their density to float across a chasm. These were not conscious acts of magic, but intuitive, almost instinctual responses, a natural consequence of their deep integration with the Veil. Their minds, having processed centuries of impossible data, developed an even greater capacity for nonlinear thought, allowing them to grasp concepts that would shatter a baseline human intellect. Their society became a living testament to adaptive existence. Rigid hierarchies dissolved, replaced by meritocracies based on expertise in veil physics, interdimensional navigation, or psychospiritual resilience. Art and philosophy intertwined, exploring the profound implications of their existence, the nature of consciousness in a fluid reality, the ethics of terraforming nightmare dimensions, and humanity's new role as cosmic gardeners. The Veil Beasts, particularly the Reality Shapers, became unexpected partners in this grand project. Through Alara's continued efforts, a deeper understanding had blossomed. The Shapers, ancient and wise in their own alien way, had come to see the Aethel-Forge not as invaders, but as fellow architects, albeit with a different approach. They sometimes offer their own insights into the deeper currents of the Veil, guiding the Aethel-Forge to dimensions of unique chaos, or warning them of unseen dangers. It was a bizarre, yet profound, alliance between two species born of the same impossible reality. One of the most ambitious projects was the Chrononexus, a new section of the Aethel-Forge specifically designed to interface with dimensions where time itself was fluid or multidirectional. Here, Aethel-Forge chronologists, their minds trained to perceive temporal paradoxes without succumbing to madness, studied the intricate dance of causality. They learned to navigate temporal eddies, to glimpse potential futures and pasts, not to change them, but to understand the grand tapestry of time. This led to the Echo Libraries, vast mental constructs within the Nexus Spire, where the Aethel-Forge stored the echoes of countless realities. It was a repository of multiversal knowledge, a living archive of every dimension they had touched, every civilization they had observed. The Aethel-Forge were no longer just survivors of a catastrophe. They were the inheritors of a new cosmic mandate. They were the ones who understood the beauty in chaos, the order in madness, the potential in the impossible. They were the living proof that humanity, when pushed to its absolute limits, would not break. Instead, it would adapt, transform, and emerge as something far greater than it had ever been. The Odyssey, their ancestral vessel, remained a revered ruin at the heart of the Aethel-Forge, a silent monument to their origins. Its broken hull, now overgrown with void flora and integrated into the city structure, served as a constant reminder of the journey they had undertaken. They honored their past, but they lived for their future, a future that stretched across an infinite, terrifying, and utterly magnificent multiverse. The Aethel-Born, humanity's children of the nightmare, were ready to embrace it all. The Aethel-Born had not merely thrived in a nightmare dimension, they had transcended it. Their civilization, the Aethel-Forge, was a marvel of adaptive engineering and psychospiritual resilience, a vibrant hub from which they now projected their influence across the multiverse. The initial horror of the Veil had become their greatest teacher, forging them into a species uniquely equipped to navigate the most hostile and alien realities. Alara Whisper, the Oracle, was now less a person and more a living conduit to the Veil itself. Her form shimmered with pure Aethel energy, her voice echoing with the subtle hum of the dimension. She was the living heart of their multiversal network. Her consciousness spread across the myriad Veil gates, sensing the pulse of distant realities. She could guide the multiversal seeds with pinpoint accuracy, ensuring they found fertile ground in even the most inimical dimensions. Dr. Eris Thorne's consciousness, fully integrated into the Nexus Spire, had become the collective mind of Aethel-Born science. He processed unimaginable amounts of data from newly seeded dimensions, refining the seeds, designing new adaptive technologies, and constantly pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. His mind, now a vast network of interconnected Aethel crystals, was a testament to the ultimate triumph of human intellect over physical limitations. The Aethel-Born had become true masters of reality manipulation. They could, with sufficient Aethel energy and mental focus, temporarily stabilize or destabilize localized reality fields, creating temporary shelters in chaotic dimensions or disrupting hostile entities. Their Voidweave technology had advanced to the point where it could self-repair and even subtly reconfigure its structure in response to environmental changes. Their interaction with the Veil beasts had deepened into a complex, symbiotic relationship. The Reality Shapers, in particular, occasionally collaborated on grand projects, using their innate abilities to sculpt raw dimensional energy into stable forms, creating vast, living structures that served as way stations between dimensions. It was a testament to humanity's capacity for empathy and understanding, even with beings whose very existence defied conventional logic. The Multiversal Seed Project was an unparalleled success. Hundreds of nightmare dimensions, once barren and hostile, now contained nascent ecosystems of adapted life, slowly growing, evolving, and eventually fostering new forms of intelligent, resilient beings. Some of these new civilizations, born from the seeds, were direct descendants of Aethel-Born colonists, while others were entirely new species, guided by the seed's foundational programming to adapt and thrive. The Aethel-Born did not seek to impose their will or culture on these new realities. Instead, they acted as benevolent guardians, offering guidance, knowledge, and the unique technologies born from the Aethel-Forge. They were the elder siblings of the multiverse, sharing the lessons learned from their own crucible of survival. Their ultimate purpose had become clear: to propagate resilience, to demonstrate that life, in all its myriad forms, could find a way to flourish even in the most impossible of circumstances. They were the living embodiment of the humanity, spirit, writ large across the cosmic canvas. The Odyssey, the broken vessel that had brought them to this nightmare, was now a sacred monument, its core integrated into the very heart of the Aethel-Forge. It was a constant reminder of their humble, terrifying beginnings and the unimaginable heights they had reached. The Aethel-Born looked out at the unending horizon of the multiverse, not with fear, but with boundless curiosity and an unyielding spirit of adventure. They were no longer just humans. They were the Aethel-Born, the children of the Veil, the architects of reality, forever pushing the boundaries of existence, forever thriving in the impossible. Their journey was far from over. It had only just begun.